Today we're talking about proportional relationships, okay? Determine if each situation represents a proportional relationship and explain our reasoning, okay? So, in order to determine if they're a proportional relationship, we need to have the same unit of one of these things. So, let's take a look. A brownie recipe calls for 3 parts cocoa powder to 2 parts of flour. Lizzie adds 1/3 cup of cocoa powder and half cup of flour. We're deciding, are these two things proportional? Well, remember, for a proportional relationship, we have two fractions that are equivalent, okay? Two ratios that are equivalent, all right? Now, for this first one, if the recipe calls for 3 parts of cocoa to 2 parts of flour, we're trying to decide, is that the same thing as uh, 1/3 cup of cocoa to 1/2 cup of flour? So this is a fractional ratio that we still need to determine, are these things equivalent? Well, we can find the unit rate of each per 1 cup of flour. And we do that by dividing these. 3 divided by 2 is going to give us 1.5 cups of cocoa powder to 1 cup of flour. And 1/3 divided by 1/2 is going to give me 2/3 cup of cocoa for 1 cup of flour. Okay, so this is, and if I write this as a fraction, it's going to be 3/2. So those are not equivalent, which means they are not proportional relationships. Okay, they need to uh, be equal to one another in order to be the same. Okay, so let's try that again. So no, they're not equivalent because for each cup of flour, the recipe calls for 1.5 cups of cocoa, but Lizzie only used 2/3 cup of cocoa for each cup. Okay, that would be a way to explain our reasoning there. Okay, a car travels 26 miles on 1 gallon of gas. Now we've already got our unit rate here, 26 miles per gallon. Okay. Now, if Jorge drives 130 miles on 5 gallons, we're trying to figure out, are those things equal? Well, again, we can just divide them in order to find our unit rate, and that would be 26 miles for 1 gallon. So those are equivalent. So, yes, they are proportional. All right. This is our proportion. All right. Now, there are two more that you can try just like those here. I do want to take a look at this one here. Now, this one says an inchworm moved 1/2 foot in 10 seconds. An earthworm moved 12 inches in 60 seconds. So first thing I need to do is make a conversion here. So we're making sure that we're looking at the same units when we're comparing. Okay, because 1/2 foot and 1/2 inch are not the same thing. So 1/2 foot we know is equal to 6 inches. Okay, so if we've got 6 inches in 10 seconds and we have 12 inches in 60 seconds, are those equivalent? Okay, and if we find our unit rate, that would be 0.6 inches in 1 minute and zero point 0.2, sorry, in 1 second, and 0.2. So no, these are not a proportional relationship. They are not proportional. And here's another one just like that that you can try where you have to do those conversions. One other way that you can compare things and determine if they're proportional is by using a table. Okay, and this one says, to make a purple crayon, 1 part red pigment needs to be mixed with 2 parts blue pigment. John uses 4 teaspoons of red pigment and 8 teaspoons of blue pigment. Okay, now when this says parts, okay, you can translate that to any unit as long as both units are the same. So 1 cup of red pigment for 2 cups of blue pigment, 1 cup of 1 teaspoon of red pigment to 2 teaspoons of blue pigment. All right, the units doesn't matter. In this particular instance, John uses teaspoons. Okay, he uses 4 teaspoons of red pigment and 8 teaspoons of blue pigment. So we're going to see if that is the same here. So red to blue is what we're looking at. And what it calls for is a 1 part red to 2 parts blue. All right. And I'm going to scale this up and do 2 parts red would be 4 parts of blue. If there were 3 parts of red, that would mean 6 parts of blue. There are 4 parts of red, that means there has to be 8 parts blue. And you can see the ratio that John used is right here in the table. And because it shows up in the table, that tells us that our 1 to 2 ratio is equivalent to our 4 to 8 ratio. Okay, sometimes tables are easy to use, and sometimes they get a little bit confusing with halves and it doesn't equivalently go through, but that is another way to take a look at those. Okay, you can try these next 4 using any of the ways that we've talked about so far.